There's something timeless about the aroma of beef stew gently simmering away on a cool afternoon, filling the kitchen with promises of warmth and comfort. But not all beef stew is created equal. The secret to a truly memorable stew, one that delivers deep, complex flavor and melt-in-your-mouth tenderness, starts with a single essential step: browning the beef to perfection. The resulting dish is a celebration of hearty ingredients that work in harmony: succulent chunks of beef, tender potatoes, sweet carrots, and a richly flavored broth. Let's journey through the art of crafting beef stew with potatoes, with an emphasis on achieving that elusive, savory brown crust on the meat that elevates the entire dish. Imagine the process beginning with the careful selection of beef. For stew, tougher cuts like chuck or brisket are ideal, boasting enough marbling and connective tissue to transform under slow, gentle cooking into fork-tender morsels. But before you ever consider adding liquid or vegetables, the meat demands your attention. Pat the beef dry with paper towels, removing excess moisture. This is not a trivial step. Moisture is the enemy of browning. What you're seeking is the Maillard reaction, a magical combination of heat and protein that develops complex, savory flavors and an irresistible brown crust. Heat a heavy-bottomed Dutch oven or large pot over medium-high heat. Swirl in a bit of oil, just enough to coat the bottom. Once the oil shimmers, add the beef in batches, leaving space between each piece. Resist the temptation to crowd the pan. Doing so will trap steam and inhibit browning. Let the meat sizzle undisturbed until a deep brown crust forms, then turn to brown all sides. The transformation is dramatic. Pale, nondescript chunks become caramelized jewels, promising a stew with extraordinary depth. Remove the browned beef and set it aside, allowing the fond, the golden brown bits left clinging to the pan, to become the foundation of your stew's flavor. Next comes the aromatic base. Into the same pot, add diced onions, letting them sweat and pick up the fond's flavor. Stir occasionally, scraping the bottom to loosen the bits. The onions soften, turning translucent and sweet. Add minced garlic, stirring just until fragrant, careful not to burn it. If you wish, a spoonful of tomato paste can be added and cooked for a minute or two, imparting a subtle acidity and richness to the stew. Now, return the browned beef to the pot, nestling it amid the onions and garlic. Sprinkle in a bit of flour, tossing everything together. The flour will help thicken the stew as it cooks, giving the finished dish a luscious, velvety texture. Deglaze the pot with a splash of red wine or beef stock, scraping up every last bit of fond. The liquid will hiss and bubble, capturing the concentrated flavor. Pour in more beef stock, enough to almost, but not quite, cover the meat. Add a couple of bay leaves, a few sprigs of thyme, and perhaps a sprig of rosemary if you like. Season with salt and freshly cracked black pepper. Bring the mixture to a gentle simmer, then reduce the heat to low. Cover the pot, leaving the lid slightly askew to allow a bit of steam to escape, and let the beef cook slowly. This is where patience pays off. Over the next hour or so, the tough fibers in the beef will relax, becoming tender and succulent as they absorb the flavors of the broth and aromatics. While the beef is slowly tenderizing, turn your attention to the potatoes. Waxy varieties, such as Yukon Gold or red potatoes, are best. They hold their shape during cooking and provide a pleasing, creamy texture. Peel them if you prefer, or simply scrub them clean and cut into generous chunks. Carrots, too, are essential, lending sweetness and color. For added depth, consider including celery, parsnips, or even a handful of mushrooms. After about an hour of simmering, add the potatoes and carrots to the stew. Nestle them into the bubbling broth, ensuring they're just submerged. Continue to cook, unhurried, letting the flavors meld and the vegetables soften without falling apart. The potatoes will absorb the savory essence of the broth, becoming tender but not mushy. As the stew nears completion, taste and adjust the seasoning. A splash of Worcestershire sauce or a teaspoon of Dijon mustard can add subtle complexity, while a handful of chopped fresh parsley stirred in just before serving brightens the dish. If the broth seems thin, let it simmer uncovered for a few minutes to concentrate. If it's too thick, add a bit more stock. Ladle the stew into generous bowls, making sure each serving includes a bit of everything: beef, potatoes, carrots, and plenty of rich broth. The aroma is intoxicating, a promise of deep flavor and satisfying comfort. The beef, having been browned to perfection at the outset, is now deeply savory, its flavor permeating every spoonful. The potatoes are creamy and tender, the carrots sweet, and the broth thick and luxurious. What makes this dish so universally beloved? Perhaps it's the way each ingredient transforms, both individually and together. The beef, tough and unassuming at first, becomes the star, rich, flavorful, and tender. The potatoes, usually humble, absorb the essence of the stew, their creamy texture a perfect counterpoint to the meat. The slow simmer allows the flavors to mingle and intensify, creating a dish that is both rustic and refined. Beyond the ingredients and the techniques lies something more. Beef stew with potatoes is a dish that invites gathering. It's meant to be shared, ladled into bowls at a family table, or offered to friends on a cold night. It nourishes not just the body, but the spirit, offering comfort and warmth in every bite. Of course, every cook will find their own variations. Some might add a handful of frozen peas at the end for a pop of sweetness and color. Others may tuck in a few pearl onions or a splash of balsamic vinegar. Some prefer their stew thick and spoonable. Others like it brothy, perfect for dipping crusty bread. But the foundation remains the same: beef, browned to perfection, simmered with potatoes and vegetables until everything is just right. In the end, great beef stew with potatoes is as much about the process as the result. It's about taking the time to brown the meat properly, to coax flavor from the simplest of ingredients, and to let everything meld together at its own pace. It's about filling your home with the aroma of something wonderful, and then gathering to enjoy the fruits of your labor. So as you savor each spoonful, remember the journey: the sizzle of beef in a hot pan, the gentle simmer, the slow transformation of tough cuts into something sublime. That's the magic of beef stew with potatoes, browned to perfection. It's a dish that reminds us of the power of patience, the value of attention to detail, and the simple pleasures of a meal well made and well shared. And perhaps, as you finish your bowl, you'll be inspired to make it again, experimenting with different vegetables or herbs, but always returning to that essential first step. For in the browning of the beef, in that patient golden sear, lies the secret to a stew that's more than just a meal. It's an experience, a memory, a comfort, and a joy.